Hey guys, VaulSC here. Hope that you're doing well. Hope that you're surviving the coronavirus lockdown, which is not a lot of fun. I've been working from home, have not been enjoying it, but here we are. Tabletop Simulator League going very well. But enough about me. I'm going to take the time to talk about the White Banner Army sectorial and the Svalarheima Winter Force sectorial. It's not going to be like my usual faction reviews. I'm just going to really focus on the news and the highlights. Normally I'd do a individual breakdown of every unit available to the sectorial, even though we're very familiar with some of the stuff that's available to other sectorials in the past. But just going to follow the news and the highlights for this one. Part of that is because this year we're getting Code 1, but we're also getting N4 apparently, so the game's going to maybe receive a shake-up. And if you take anything away from this video at all, if you just take one thing away from what I'm about to say about all of this, let it be that the game's going to change. Different stuff is going to be in there. We already know a little bit about some of the changes. Critical hits changing, for example, to be an additional armor save rather than that particular hit just got through your armor, as well as winning the face-to-face rolls. So if we have a lot of changes like that, then I think that the appreciations and the evaluations of a lot of these unit profiles will be different, and I'm expecting that to be true to some extent. My prediction, though, is that a lot of the stuff in the game won't get changed that much. From what I'm hearing and what I'm expecting, it won't be like the difference between the second edition and the third edition we're currently in, but that remains to be seen. Anyway, going to be talking a lot about the new profiles and units, but please just bear in mind that this is being recorded on the 6th of April 2020. A lot of stuff's going to go out of date. In fact, I'm a little bit worried for my channel because there's so much content on my channel which is going to be really old news and irrelevant and not really applicable if the game changes a lot, but that's okay. Just means I'll have to make a whole lot more videos for you guys to watch, and I probably will. Okay, should we start with White Banner Army? I hope you guys enjoyed my April Fool's video. Yes, I'm going to be a little bit more thorough than that video was, obviously, and maybe even a little bit more favorable. Nah, who am I kidding? I'm going to be just as brutal, if not more. So let's start with the fun one. Tiangu Orbital Activity Squad. This unit's been talked about on the forums and on social media a lot. For those of you who are a little bit less experienced and don't know very much, the standout thing of this unit is that it does have the ability to be equipped with a jammer, and you have a holo projector level 1 ability there, and it can go on a link team. So with the jammer, obviously that's something that you can attack an enemy model without seeing it, active turn, reactive turn, and your opponent won't know that you have it. Well, they'll know that you have it from a context and the meta, but they won't be able to immediately guarantee which of your models has it just by looking at it because it'll be disguised. So as they approach, they aren't sure where the jam is going to come from. That makes it deadly. But what makes it really deadly is the fact that it's in a fire team. So the fire team bonuses do apply. That got ruled on last year when in an interplanetary. Obviously, the Spec Ops rules allowed you to put jammers and link teams, and people were like, no, that's really busted, but they don't get the bonuses. And then they were like, well, they do get the bonuses. Came up in really a high-level game. So when he's trying to jam you, this model is effectively willpower 17 instead, because it's treated like a ranged attack basically, and you get 2 shots with it rather than 1. What makes things even more absurd and more egregious is that if the enemy is moving into range of the jammer, you get to use 6th Sense level 2 granted to you by the link team to delay your ARO. And normally you'd want to reset against a jammer, but they can't even do that because apparently reset is only a move that you're able to make in response to somebody attacking you with a comms attack. So it's extremely deadly. Is this a good unit? Yes, of course it is. What percentage of White Banner lists should include the Tiangu? 100%. You can imagine somebody trying to get McMurray in to bomb them with spec fire close range. Not going to work, because once you jam a McMurray, which he's not immune to for some reason, they can't spend any more orders on him. Really handy against drop troops and tags coming up real close if they do that, and assassins coming in on Iwab and that kind of thing. But obviously for missions where normally you'd try and want to take second turn, for example, to have the last laugh at the end of the game, moving into the zones, grabbing the consoles. This also allows you to do quite well with first turn, because you can move into the section where you need to for power pack or armory or whatever it might be, and set up your Holo Projector 1 jammers somewhere, and your opponent coming into range, they won't be able to use stealth because 6th Sense Level 2 ignores that. It's just crazy. So you are only going to see the jammer profile. The rest of them, I mean, even though these may be good profiles, it just doesn't matter. The jammer's just too good not to take. Can't really speak too much for vanilla. With vanilla, obviously, there are a lot of good things in that faction at the moment, so it's pretty tight. But between these two profiles, I prefer the boarding shotgun, just purely because the rest of the team have combi rifles, and you at least get grenades. And if you're going to be moving the Link team up to take advantage of the jammer, then being able to throw grenades spec fire is pretty cool, and especially since the Link team gives you bonuses for that. So that's just a breakdown of like what you're getting here. Let's move that all to one side and actually give you the commentary. Let's just give you the overall commentary though, because damn, they really got crazy with this one. And again, like, the games are going to change. This is the important thing. With N4, they may change jammers, they may change link teams, they may change stuff that makes this guy broken, and bring him down to a reasonable level again. So I want you to take that away. Now, I'm a bit pessimistic about this kind of thing. I think Corvus Belli aren't really competent enough to fix problems like this in a short space of time, but they do fix some stuff. One thing I do want to raise, though, is that I sometimes see the argument from people that it's not busted because White Banner's not going off and winning all the tournaments and all the games. This is true. White Banner overall is not a good sectorial. I put it in the bottom half of the power rankings, is where I'd put it. But this is still a problem. And the analogy that I like to use, and I don't know if I've shared this analogy with you guys before, but it goes like this. Let's say you are looking for a new house. You're going to buy a new home, and you've been visiting all these different places, and the real estate agent that's with you has just about sold you on this one house, and right before you make the final decision, you're standing in the bedroom of the house that you're thinking of purchasing, and the real estate agent pulls out like a permanent marker and draws a picture of a penis on the wall of the bedroom. So you say, why would you do that? You're trying to sell me this house, and now you've deliberately devalued it for no reason. Why on earth would you do that? And the argument that this real estate agent person comes back with to you, their defense of what's just happened, is the house is still livable. You can still sleep in the bed. The roof's still there. It's going to shelter you from the rain. No problem with living in the house. So stop complaining about it. That's the argument. But of course, you say, well, yeah, that's true, but you didn't need to do that. You didn't need to put that on the wall. You've devalued it. You've made it less worth. You've made it less likely for me to live in this house and buy it. I mean, I still can, but there was nothing to be gained by doing that. And the analogy there, hopefully you sort of get where I'm going with this. Corvus Belli didn't need to put a linkable jammer in the game. They didn't need to do it. It doesn't make the game more fun or more interesting. Yes, the game's still playable. The house is still livable. You can still sleep in the bed. You can still play Yuching and have a really good time against other people. But people don't need to have the experience of just trying to sort of work around this all the time. It's not a fun problem to solve. It's not a rule that works well. It doesn't make the game interesting for both sides. It's just really pathetic and stupid. I'm sorry, guys, but, they're just really fucking incompetent sometimes. It just has to be said. But that's enough for me about that profile. Like I said, they could fix it. Now, let's go over to just quickly Zhanchi. It's good that they're actually able to use Zhanchis a bit more in terms of an actual core link. The only problem is that, like Invincible Army, the stars of the show are still going to be the things that you add to it, and we'll get to them in a minute. Hundun Ambush Unit. This guy very much reminds me of the Raiden. So back in the day, Yuqing actually was not split off from Japanese sectorial, and the Raiden was a unit that you could take before it got renamed and it became a completely different unit in JSA. So this guy's, it's almost like giving Yuqing that unit back, and I actually did quite like the Raiden heavy rocket launcher back in the day, and for the same reason I do kind of like this profile here with the heavy rocket launcher. 26 points is very reasonable for a guy with BS13 and armor 3 for the role of being an ARO piece, because if you know your opponent's got an HMG and it's going to spray you down, you can just hope that they fail to discover, and sometimes that'll work. Also, this guy can be useful in the active turn as well, when they've just left something out midfield and you may not have anything else in position to attack it. Burst 2 heavy rocket launcher with a surprise attack, BS13, can be quite devastating. So for his points, I find him really reasonable. The only thing, and the other profiles just not as much, but within the context of vanilla Yuqing though, and just bear in mind, all of the new profiles being in there, they help vanilla Yuqing without being a particularly good sectorial on their own, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But within the context of vanilla Yuqing though, again, it's very tight. There are so many awesome profiles that you always want, and as you're building your list, you're going, right, okay, I want the Celestial Guide control device, and I want the 5 Guangxi, sorry, 4 Guangxi, and I want the Daoying hacker, and you want this and you want that, and before long you've filled up your list and you've got, you know, your Liberto in there, and there may not be extra points for fanciful things like this. Just depends on how you build, but for me, this guy's going to be a hard sell for vanilla Yuqing, which is already very, you know, jam-packed with amazing profiles. Adil Memut. So he's got an interesting sort of concoction of abilities, and for me, I always take the same view of these kind of models that are a bit sort of jack of all trade and don't really fulfill a specific role particularly well. If you want him leading your charge of your Zhanchis, for example, BS13 breaker rifle, pretty good, but you could be doing that with Lei Gong or a Shangji or with Qiang Gao, for example. So I just don't really like him for that role, because if you're going to have somebody doing the shooting, you may as well make it the best shooter you have available to you. You don't want to sort of be, okay, well, this guy's kind of good at shooting, he's going to step up and be the guy taking on that Tanko missile launcher and a link team on the other side of the table. It's just not wise. He's very good in close combat. I quite like that. He will still lose against similarly good close combat opponents that happen to get a surprise attack on him. Being in the link team will mean that doesn't happen because he's got Sixth Sense, but sometimes he may lose the link bonuses, and you'll be feeling a bit silly if somebody comes in with their ninja hitting you with a -6. That can be pretty rough. I see that there's veteran level 1 option there as well, which is nice for jammer immunity, which is pretty cool. But in vanilla Yuqing, that's usually the Krakot doing that job. Chain of command option's nice, but again, you're paying so many points for this guy, and you've really got to ask what his job is. Note that another thing you can do is you could use your Holo Projector 1 guy to pretend to be the chain of command option, and that may fool a few people into thinking you've got the ability, but really smart opponents will usually see through things. Sense is nice, but again, I mean, the points you pay for that smattering of abilities, and you're never going to just cash in on them on any particular game and get value out of every single ability. So I don't particularly like that. Jingho, the Shadow of Huangdi. I've only played a couple of games against White Banner so far, and she did feature in one of them. I was quite impressed with her arsenal. She's a bit different from Mimut, because in Jing's case, you can send her out there and do a lot of fighting with her, whereas Mimut kind of wants to hang back with the link team. And the reason why she's a bit different is she can bring that shell and muck up the field and at least has smoke, and so she's got a bit of a vehicle for getting into close combat. Having said that, well, yeah, another thing as well, I guess, the forward deployment level 1 means that she can sort of move out. I mean, he's got that as well, but climbing plus makes her a bit more mobile. That's nice. She's definitely better with mimetism for the whole shooting thing. Multi-rifle, a lot better than a breaker combo rifle. So she's a bit more of a Rambo. It's just a bit vulnerable. NWI and no shock immunity of any kind, as far as I can tell. Being a specialist is nice. Yeah, I can see the argument, especially within the sectorial where you don't have a lot of options for going out and attacking. In vanilla, though, I think there are probably going to be some more straight-up choices. So yeah, Jinko with the Shaolin Monk added on, I think that could be pretty cool. Getting onto the midfield, throwing that smoke grenade, and then rushing into close combat. You can even use the Shaolin as a helper to get a +1 burst, and that's really going to allow you to thrash things. Even other high-quality close combat troops, you'll be able to break them hopefully with your additional burst. Quite expensive, but if you play her carefully, if you play her really well, I think that you can get reward out of her. It's just, I think this is something I'd recommend more for experienced players rather than completely new players. Lei Gong, I've tried him out in vanilla. I think he's pretty cool. I liked him more when he was 6'4", but they corrected that. So now he's just alright. The thing that I do find appealing, though, is that he does make a good point man for the Link team, more so than I think Mimut does. With Mimut, he's got NWI but no shock immunity, whereas Lei Gong does have that and bioimmunity there. And I think that is important, because if you're trying to take out like a Q drone that's already got assisted fire on it, this guy does a pretty good job. He's got MSV1 to ignore the mimetism, just that general kind of opponent, and if they crit you, you're not shocked off the table because you've got bioimmunity there, so I find that's really nice. And the Albedo just generally gives him more situations where he just does a better job at the shooting than somebody like this would. Similar ballistic skill, but again, you know, MSV1 and Albedo, whereas Mimut doesn't really have much else as far as that's concerned. And if he does want to break off from the Link team, the run and gun speed is very good, and you still get chain of command, and ultimately he's cheaper. So if you're gonna have somebody play that role as the point man of the Link team, somebody to do the mid-range shooting, I think this guy works out a bit better. Tiger Soldiers, we already know they're good. Yi Mao, I found these guys fairly unimpressive, but you know what I'm like. I mean, I am not a huge fan of these 4-2 speed medium infantry models. This may be changing in N4. I don't think the medium infantry were all that popular. If you look at Wildcats and Bolts and Rodox and stuff like that throughout N3, we didn't see a ton of that sort of stuff. These guys, you pay medium infantry costs, and you do get something for that cost. MSV1 and mimetism's nothing to scoff at, and they've got super jumps, so they're like a super Rodoc really that are a little bit better. Shame that they don't have an HMG. Missile launch is nice, multi-rifle, so they've got some really good kit. Yeah, Chain Colt in there, Engineer. I think that if they buff medium infantry to make them a bit more mobile, I think these guys would be decent. Armor 2, not the most survivable. I mean, I'd hate to invest in a whole Link team full of these guys only to have them hit by something like a direct template weapon or a lucky spec fire grenade and have 2 of them die or something. I'd be feeling really horrible because all those points invested, suddenly the team becomes pretty crap. On paper, though, the stats definitely check out, and the gear, I mean, they've got a lot going for them. They just don't, for my style, they're not super appealing. King Gao came from the new Kickstarter, the spaceship game, Defiance. I like that he can join the Zhanchis. That makes him, to me, that makes him a little bit more useful than you'd expect him to be in Invincible Army. This sectorial overall is more appealing than Invincible Army, by the way. It's a better sectorial, so there's something there. 43 points is a lot, but if you really want a good long-range gun in your Link team, so you put them in there, and then you add the Zhanchis. I quite like have Li Gong in there as well, but we'll talk about the Shang-Chi option in a second. He is expensive, but again, every good army list needs a solid HMG, or just about all of them do anyway. Because sometimes you're going to be on these open tables where you have to take out a sniper, and what better gun to do that with than an HMG? It's just a shame you've got to pay a few extra points for things like Kinematica, Veteran, and Fatality. None of those are going to be super useful. Even the Nanopulsar, like, if you gave me a deal where I could save like 6 points on him, but I had to give up the Nanopulsar, Fatality, Kinematica, and Veteran, I would happily give up those three things and just have a 37-point Zuyong kind of guy with an HMG in the link team. That I'd be fine with that, totally fine. So a bit of points bloat for unnecessary abilities, but he's the kind of guy that you need to play that sort of role. Dalfei is still cool. The Jujak Regiment, yeah. 2 wounds, so heavy infantry, fairly cheap heavy infantry. They can be part of any fire team of Zhanchi. That's the annoying part, because you're not going to want a full fire team core of Zhanchi, and it's just not. They're just not going to be part of a very good pain train. That's the only problem. I mean, conceivably, you could pop them in there, and you could have like a lot of Zhanchi with tactical awareness and do the whole tactical awareness link team thing, but as we know from Invincible Army, that's not really the best army list archetype. It is just too vulnerable against a lot of things. You've got your jammers, hidden deployment missile launchers, hacking, mad traps. There's a lot of stuff that really shut it down. If you just put him out there by himself, though, you'd see the same reasons why people don't usually like have a basic plain Orc Trooper in their Pano army, or a basic plain Jane Mobile Brigada in their army. Usually models like this are more useful when they are linked. He's interesting. Looking at his kit, 6-2 move, all right. Stats, fine. Courage, Kinematica, whatever. The Flamethrower, cool. You don't often see the heavy Flamethrower on a heavy infantry model like this. It's all good. But again, he's just a heavy infantry model at the end of the day. He's still going to be vulnerable against hacking and isolation and lucky T2 rifle or missile launcher hit. A heavy infantry model is really going to be at its best when it's the point man of a cheaper link team, and that's just not something you can do very well. The Zhanchi, so this guy has always suffered from being too expensive. Whenever we've compared him to stuff like Zuyongs and Tankos and other things out there which do a similar job but cost way less, this guy's always looked a bit weak. I do actually think that he's useful for this sectorial, just in the absence of other better choices. I kind of like the idea of popping in the heavy rocket launcher tactical awareness into the Zhanchi link team and then rounding them out with Lei Gong. That way you've got a bit of tactical awareness to move them around. The heavy rocket launcher makes a good ARO, plus the light shotgun is a nice sidearm for that kind of model. 42 points is a lot to pay, but at least you get that tactical awareness order out of it, and having an additional order in there is worth quite a bit. And being a point man, active turn, reactive turn, armor 4 pretty good, BS 13 goes up to 16. He's alright. It's not the best thing in the game, but really, really useful. Similarly, the combi rifle deflector, that can be handy if you've got a hacker in the team. Most of these other profiles, though, pretty boring and very, very costly. And you're going to be trying to take some of the other really good, useful profiles in your army list, and you don't want to be going without. You don't want to be leaving the cupboard bare by investing too much, and that's what you'd be doing if you really over-invested. It does say up to 1 Zhanchi, and that sounds about right. Just popping 1 Zhanchi at most in your Zhanchi link team. Blue Wolf, I keep saying it, but the game's going to change. If the game turns out to be a real armor-heavy fest where everybody's taking heavily armored stuff because of the way that crits work and you want a lot of AP, having an AP Spitfire is nice. The thing is, most tags already have some sort of multi-weapon, which is armor-piercing anyway, and the HMG is going to be a more useful gun for something that starts in the deployment zone and sort of needs to do long-range shooting. That's what it's there for. The Spitfire can be a bit awkward. Even when I'm playing like the Sphinx, for example, Sphinx sometimes finds itself at range bands it doesn't want to be. Difference between the Sphinx and this guy, though, is that the Sphinx is actually faster and is more mobile and has camo state to get it into position, whereas this guy, you move out from the deployment zone, you're already worried about a missile launcher or a sniper. Imagine you leave your deployment zone and somebody appears with like a TO sniper, and it's like a Hexa sniper, and it just fires one stun round and stuns this guy, and then that's your whole turn shut down because your BTS 6 wasn't enough. I mean, it would not feel particularly good. He's very, very expensive. When I compare him to something like a Tikbalang, which is sort of similar movement, similar armor BTS, the Tikbalang at least has a way of winning the close combat, sorry, the ranged shootout, because it's got the good range band, it's got better ballistic skill, has mimetism, whereas this guy has full auto, so +1 burst, but that's about it. So it makes it quite tough for this guy to fend off, you know, enemy. I mean, let's put it this way: if I'm going up against a Tanko on a link team, full link team, I'm kind of scared to do it with this model. If I can't close the distance and get inside that enemy range band, if I'm having to like shoot at that missile launcher from long range, then he's got a really good chance of beating me. If I come to less than 24, then that Tanko is going to be hitting me on 13s. I'm going to be hitting on 14s on 5 dice. But yeah, it's a pretty flimsy tag. It's pretty tough. So, let's just hope that things change a fair bit in the next edition. This model turns out to be really useful and cool. At the moment, I wouldn't really be taking it in N3. I think it sucks. But, you know, game's going to be changing. This long, yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. I've come up against it in the games that I've been playing. I think the 20-point version is okay. 25 is just a bit much to pay for the addition of that shotgun. Given that it's more of an ARO piece. It's more of a deployment zone defender. Yeah, you can put assisted fire on it and heavy shotgun, very nice, but you've got to save that 5 points. That's more important than having the heavy shotgun. And even at 20 points, it does feel a bit expensive for just this little defender that's not doing too much in the way of influencing the actual long-range shootouts. It can get assisted fire, which I think is nice. And with Tooth Panzerfaust, you can have that assisted fire, surprise shot, camouflage, active turn, you know, bullying sort of hit there where you're firing both rounds at once. This model's also kind of a handy one to include in coordinated orders, right? So if you've got 2 of them plus something else out there with a sniper or a missile launcher, maybe the Hundun, for example. So you coordinate your Hundun as well as your 2 camo bots, and they're all going to home in on this enemy tag or whatever it is trying to defend. Enemy Tanko missile launcher, and you manage to get your Panzerfaust through, then that could be a pretty good strategy because your opponent's going to be taking a bunch of armor saves and hopefully dying, and that solves a really annoying problem. And then you've also got the mine layer with the mines defending your deployment zone, so really handy. Yeah, I think this guy's decent. He's not the best thing that I've ever seen, but I'd definitely consider taking 1 or 2. They are availability too, so you can do that. So yeah, go for gold. Kunai Solutions, yeah, I mean, on paper and by itself, it's a decent unit. Compared to the existing ninja in the game, it's not. So if you're playing Yu Ching, obviously you've got a better ninja because the best way to use a model with CC 22 and martial arts level 3 is to move it in camo state, get into close combat, hopefully within a smoke grenade, and just murder it, preferably with the help of some cheap trooper. This guy kind of, you know, he wants to be doing that, but at the same time he wants to be staying back and making use of the range band of his gun, which is kind of counterintuitive. And on top of that, he costs a whole lot more and only has BS 11. Very flimsy. The multi-terrain and climbing plus is nice. You can sort of put him on some really awkward buildings closer to your deployment zone. Does he have forward deployment, by the way? No, he doesn't. Crap. That makes it even harder to get out into close combat. So yeah, it's a shame that this guy is not very good. Sorry, he does have forward deployment. I'm looking at the overall stats here. The Shock Marksman rifle has it. So yeah, if you're going to be running either of these 2 profiles, the Shock Marksmanship rifle is the one to take. We know from experience using the existing multi-sniper ninja that this profile is absolutely terrible. This guy doesn't even have infiltration for the really janky, you know, mid-range slicing the half of the table kind of shots. But the Shock Marksman rifle, yeah, since you can't take any other TO camo in the sectorial, it's not bad. It's just not good either. So it's a shame. I think this model should cost a little bit less, or maybe have the ability to move up the board a bit more quickly. 6.4 speed or 6.2 speed even would be kind of cool. Liang Kai, after carefully considering his rules, by the way, his model is absolutely amazing. But after carefully considering his rules, I do compare him a little bit to the Miyamoto Musashi actually, because this guy's amazing in close combat, and he's got a little bit of short range attacking ability, and he's kind of resilient with his NWI there. Really good at dodging and avoiding people, and he's got the flash pulse just like Miyamoto does as well. So for that reason, I would take him sometimes. He's probably a bit better in the less sort of skirmishy factions, so I think I like him a bit more for Svalarheima. Whereas in White Banner, you've already got guys to go up and attack with. You've got a bit of close combat ability already with your monks. Sorry, I got a bit of a cold. Hopefully, I don't have the virus. I think it's just a little bit of a sniffly moment with the winter coming in. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Mimetism's nice. You're not going to be, hoping to get into a lot of shootouts with that light shotgun, but it definitely makes them a little bit more annoying to take out when they're trying to sort of pick them off with some random Spitfire moving up the board. And if he does bring a Shaolin with him, you can have the Shaolin throw the smoke grenade to cover him, and then of course they're not going to want him to move in close combat with him at that point because he's so good once he's there. So decent. If you like me and you like things which kind of control and disrupt the middle of the board and create opportunities, 22 points isn't too much to pay. And of course, Shaolin Monks, shame that they couldn't be a Fireteam Core. That would have been really cool. They would have been like Dachiratsu, but way better. But I think that would have been too much. Even if you'd allowed one of them to join a Core Link team, you'd see one of them in every Core Link team, and that'd be outrageous. So it's probably a good move that they can't do that, but ultimately this sectorial does suffer a bit from just missing out on all of the cool stuff that Yuchen can normally do. You don't have the Guangxi in there, so that's a shame. The Link teams aren't particularly ball-busting. They're missing a lot of good profiles, like Haktao, obviously, and the Ninja, and obviously they can't take the busted mercenaries like the Krakot and the Liberto and stuff like that. So you put this side by side with Vanilla and it just doesn't hold up. Okay, let's talk about Pan O. Let's talk about Svalarheima's Winter Force. Sorry about all the sniffles, guys. Can't be bothered editing that stuff out, so my apologies. Richard Quinn, not bad. You do pay the extra points for him, but at least you get useful abilities. The Shock Marksman Rifle, something that the Fusiliers can't take. MSV1, gives you a bonus there that they can't have. Forward Observer saves you from having to spend a few extra points on a Fusilier Forward Observer. Ballistic Skill 13 gives you an extra point, Armor 2, and so on. So having this guy lead your Fusiliers doesn't make them cost that much more, and if you're going to push out with them at some point, if they've been a defensive team for that whole game, this guy's a great point man for that. If, of course, you've already added in a Knight with a Spitfire, for example, then you don't really need him. But if you're running a pretty light team with mostly just Fusiliers and one missile launcher, for example, having Richie in there is not a bad idea. For some reason, Fusiliers are total available in the sectorial, but White Banner only get 4 Zhanchis. Don't really understand. But whatevs. Agnes Ferreira, terrible. Just terrible. You're spending 6 extra points on top of a Fusilier for a guy that has less ballistic skill. SNG is not really what the Fusiliers are for, right? I mean, they're there to just sit back and not really do too much shooting. 6 Sense level 1, I mean, she's got 6 Sense level 2 on the Link team. Courage, just not really needed. Specialist Operative, well, that's not really worth 6 points. So yeah, I want to give her a miss. Kahu, I think that on paper, they are pretty cool. It's just that the role that they play on the battlefield is a different thing, right? So MSV1, Mimetism, Climbing Plus, and the loadout, that looks really cool, but the thing is, you're going to be spending your orders on something in your army list, and that something has to do the job. It has to improve your position on the board. It has to gain advantages for you. And this model's not going to be going out there and trying to dodge mines and crazy koalas and clear them. It's not going to be taking on an enemy missile launcher in a Link team. It's not going to be trying to outfight a Noctifer missile launcher at long range. It's not going to be cracking the armor of a tag. It's not going to be going out there and being a really reliable specialist at full force speed, whip 12, starting in deployment zone. So, what is it really for? Can't join a Link team. I just don't really see the value of just putting all of your eggs into this guy's basket, right? Moving out there with your multi-rifle Emarat seemed like a good ability, a good loadout, anti-personnel mines. It's just that you're putting so much stock in this guy, and he can only take you so far. I'd rather invest in something which is really going to be doing a lot of work very, very well. Your shooting is going to be handled by your Link team or your NIS, your AROs by your missile launcher or your Yotum, and running across the battlefield blasting them, your Bulleteer is going to do that better than this guy would, so no thanks. It's cool that the Machinist can be part of a NIS fire team. That's one that I did have a little look at. NIS with HMG and multi-sniper and Machinist. It's expensive, this little team, but if you're playing it carefully, I think that can be pretty cool. The Machinist can quickly catch up with the NIS since they're a bit slower, and having a burst 5 HMG, just pulverizing them from the midfield is going to be brutal. It's just that most of the things that HMG is going to be attacking would have been beaten by burst 4 anyway, so you don't necessarily need to spend all these points. And things that weren't able to crack a NIS when it had 1 burst still won't be able to crack them. Things that were able to crack the NIS are still going to be able to crack it despite the +1 burst in a lot of cases. So it's a bit of a hard sell for me, but it's an interesting Harris, and I might try it out. It looks good, but ultimately I think that this Harris is not going to be the most popular thing that you can do with a sectorial. The Noken, I'll just say quickly that in the absence of a lot of other good choices, you'll probably end up taking this guy a fair bit, and the Fort Observer is a decent profile. It's just, we always lament the difference between having a model that's clearly meant to be out in the midfield with Fort Deployment Level 2 and fighting things and pressing buttons. The difference between having ODD on that model and having just plain camo state on that model is huge. Being a marker means that you can't easily be targeted by things like crazy koalas and spec fire and hacking if you're a hacker and stuff like that. Things moving into close combat with you after smoke goes down on top of you. Being a marker makes you safe from all of that stuff, and moving across a gap without being shot, they can only just try and discover and reveal you. Getting up close enough to make a Hail Mary attempt to press the button on a console is something that you can do with a camo marker. But the Noken, just, I mean, he's good at fighting because he's got good blitz skill and ODD, blah, 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 blah. But again, 1 Foxtrot or 1-0 shooting you with surprise attack gets a similar kind of job done. So he's reasonably priced. It's just that having marker state's so much better, and it's just a shame that you're playing a sectorial that relegates you to just having this guy. Or, of course, the Locust, who suffers from exactly the same kind of problem, and the Locust being more expensive. Yeah, so I think that's going to be something you run into. I mean, you compare this with, like, Varuna, who have the Crocman, obviously, and the Zulu Cobra. Just miles better, so it's a shame. Varuna, a much stronger sectorial than Svalarheima, I must say. The Infirmers, the only role that these guys really play is making the link team of Hospitaliers a bit cheaper. So you can do that. If you really want to take Hospitaliers, get HMG, get your Dr. Harris multi-rifle, sorry, combi rifle, and then you put this one in there. One weird thing is that the Hospitalier profiles, the Doctor's the only one with the Harris ability. Unless I'm mistaken, I can't see it anywhere else. And then you're adding another Doctor to the Harris, even though you don't really need one. It's like, what? So you've got 2 Doctors, which is kind of cool, and the link team is a bit cheaper rather than taking a 3rd Hospitalier. But by far, the better choice is just to not take any of these models at all and just go for the things in the sectorial which are actually good. And unfortunately, the stuff in the sectorial that's actually good is the boring stuff that was already existent in the game. You got the Yotum, Bulleteer, link team of basic Fusiliers, the NIS HMG. Those are the models that are good in the sectorial, not the new stuff, which is kind of sad. Uma, so yep, she's from Defiance as well, but I never particularly liked her. She's okay. Troll Hunter Gunnar Lundmark. It's cool that it can be any sectorial. You'd kind of want him to be part of a sectorial that's just rushing over there and getting into close combat and shooting close range. 38 points is a big investment. We're talking like heavy infantry style investment here. And he's got 1 wound and dogged. He does not have any kind of shock immunity. So if this guy gets hit by 1 random SMG plug in the face, or 1 mine, or 1 crazy koala, anything just with a little bit of shock, he's just 38 points down the drain. Don't particularly love that. For face-to-face roles and stuff, yeah, you can be in the link team, but just BS13 and no mimetism or MSV or anything like that. You know, you'd hate for him to just lose that shootout against that 1 Red Fury or whatever it may be and then just die. And getting into close combat can be a bit harder. This is a sectorial with no smoke. Yeah, climbing place plus cool, but it's not like, you know, a Hungary or Pressure where you can afford to trade it with something and climb over buildings and run with 6/6 speed. This guy's just a really hard sell, really tall order. Like the model, but yeah, just a bit of a dud profile. Varga maximum security team. Again, you can link them with Orc Troopers, but Orc Troopers aren't usually the kind of thing you want to spend a lot of points on to have, you know, as a link team in your army. You'd much rather put a single Orc in your team, like you do with Varuna and with Acontecimento. Up to 2 Orc troops can be part of a fighting corps in the sectorial army, so you can do that in Svalarheima as well, but the thing is you're adding the Orc trooper to the team of Fusiliers rather than the other way around. And you have the Knight of Justice as well, who in some cases makes a better addition to the team than the Orc trooper does, but we'll talk about him in a sec. Vargas, though, kind of assume that you're already going to be taking a bunch of Orc troopers, so if you did that, okay, albedo, bioimmunity, don't know what the bioimmunity's for. They don't have dogged or NWI, so it's a bit of a shame. And BTS 3, and not the biggest BTS. Super jump with 4-2 speed, guys. We've seen it before with Rhodox and that, but I don't see people winning lots of games with Rhodox being super mobile. I just don't see it happening a lot from where I'm from. Loadout wise, they're not too expensive. The Wild Parrot guy is kind of fun. Yeah, just not particularly impressive, really. Albedo is kind of good, but I'd rather have an albedo on something like a sniper or an HMG. Something, I mean, I guess the heavy rocket launcher is the profile you take then, just so you have 1 albedo model, and that can be quite punishing if you really are going for that link team of Orc troopers with extra people joining it, and you've got the Varga Fort Observer heavy rocket launcher. It just, again, I mean, yeah, you put the albedo there, but as soon as they just attack it with some random, you know, Dakini tac bot with assisted fire that eventually beats him, he's only got 1 wound and then just dies, so it's not great as an arrow piece. Boig soldiers, if you're a bit new and you don't really understand why this guy's terrible, I think the best way to explain why he's so bad is just to talk about his role. So you take the missile launcher, he's sitting there in partial cover, he's got long range, BS14, armor 5, plus cover, 2 wounds, very hard to shift. So that's the job that he plays. But then you compare that to the Knight of Justice with missile launcher, who also has BS14, also has armor 9, has better BTS, is less points. In fact, you save yourself 0.5 of an SWC with that profile. But the Knight is going to be in a link team. So the Knight has +3 BTS, sorry, +3 ballistic skill, and it has 6 sense level 2, so you're not just going to die to some random HMG in a smoke cloud. And it's going to have the burst 2, right? So whereas the Boig is burst 2 in active turn from full auto, the Knight is going to be burst 2 in active and reactive turn. So you're inevitably going to have a defensive link team of Fusiliers. If you really want a defensive missile, why don't you just take the Knight of Justice and put it in there? Or even the Orc Feuerbach. I mean, I personally prefer the Knight. I think is great. BTS 9 is actually helpful. And then, of course, you've got a model that, as it comes along with the link team, is good in close combat. So that seemed like an obvious choice to me. A missile launcher Knight. Then your Fusiliers, you take a Hacker, Lieutenant, Combi Rifle, maybe a Fort Observer, or if you've got Richie in there, you put Richard Quinn in, and then you've got your link team, and it's not actually the worst link team in the world. It's pretty good. Of course, you take a trauma doc to revive him, but you just don't need that missile launcher. And yeah, I know that there are probably a couple of people in the audience going, well, what about the Mark 12? Well, it's a similar sort of thing. I mean, you put the Mark 12 in there, and immediately you're comparing him to other models in the faction, which are going to do that job better. I mean, the NIS with the HMG is going to do that job better. The Bulleteer is going to do that job better. The Yotum is going to do that job better. I know it's about points and values and so forth, but he's just not going to be very good at moving around the table, getting advantages for you game after game after game. So don't take him. Orcs. Pretty cool, but they're still orcs. Same kind of thing. Yotams may be very powerful with the new change to critical hits, but we're not sure what the rest of the game will look like. We talked about Kunai and we talked about Liang Kai, and I've been talking for 45 minutes, and you're probably sick of me sniffling. So I think I'll just leave it there. I've had one game playing as Svalarheima. I've played, I think, 2 or 3 games against White Banner. I'll play some more test out games, and it's always good to have a fresh new sectorial to play around with, but sadly it's not great. I mean, I would have liked for the new models to be powerful in their own right in their own link teams for the sectorials only, and not to add a lot to the existing factions. Like Vanilla Pano and Vanilla Yuching are okay, especially Vanilla Yuching, which are in a very strong spot at the moment. Whereas these sectorials haven't really helped because they've just made the existing factions better, especially Yuching getting a jammer. And the sectorials on their own aren't particularly interesting or powerful, sadly. So that's the verdict. Always come to me for the truth, guys. I know I'm pessimistic a lot of the time. I criticize Corvus Belli, but I call it like I see it. Tell me if you'd like something different. And hopefully enjoying infiNity TTS and the League. It's going really, really well. Something to do while we're on lockdown. Hopefully we're all going to make it through. That's it for me.